This episode of Earl Grey is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org.
Hi, this is Robert O'Reilly. My name is Gowron. Honor to you and your house. You're listening to Trek FM.
The Earl Grey Hot.
Welcome to another episode of Earl Grey. I'm your host, Justin Ozer, and join with me today are the wonderful Amy Nelson and the amazing Richard Marquez. How are you doing today, Amy?
I am doing very well. It was a wonderful week last week celebrating 30 years of Next Generation, and to see all my friends' posts and on the Babel conference, all the love that Next Gen got and has received just really continued my warm and fuzzies for the week. So very happy camper over here.
Excellent. And how are you doing, Richard?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. No warm and fuzzies. Sorry, Amy.
I have enough to go around.
There we go. I'll take some. How you doing,
right.
Justin?
Yeah, I'm doing great. 30th anniversary of TNG. We have new Star Trek every week now. I'm just doing great. What can I say? So we're going to actually start out by doing something a little bit different today. So we're going to look at the most recent episode where we got comments on the Babel conference. Now, because we record this about a week and a half before the show comes out, this is going to be 2 episodes before. But we did receive some comments on the Babel conference about our 30th anniversary show that I wanted to read out. So Greg Malumbi said, "Very nice episode. Thank you for the special 30th anniversary edition of the show this week. I'm going to post my memories of TNG in a couple of days on my page, but I just wanted to say one of the things I remember asking you guys when you were going to take over was don't forget about the 30th anniversary of the show and the legacy it left behind. Yes, we have a new Star Trek this week with Discovery, but last night after I rewatched the 2 Discovery episodes, I went back to continue my 30th anniversary rewatch of TNG." So thank you, Greg. Glad you enjoyed that. And you did start a thread in the Babel conference where people shared all kinds of great memories of TNG, and we really appreciate that as part of the celebration of the 30th anniversary of The Next Generation.
Yeah, I enjoyed reading all of those posts. As I said, it just is so nice that people still remember and appreciate the Next Generation.
And it was so wonderful on Thursday, the 28th of September, which was the actual anniversary. There was all of this stuff going on Facebook and Twitter, people sharing their memories and appreciating the Next Generation. It was nice, even in the midst of Discovery getting all of the attention, which it should, for that one day, it was all about the Next Generation, and I really loved that. So there was another comment I wanted to read, a short one, but from Christopher Bacca saying, "Enjoyed the podcast, some really great interviews." Glad you enjoyed the interviews. Amy and I went to STLV and gathered those interviews of some of the TNG actors and some fans. If you haven't heard that episode, there's some great interviews on there that we think you should check out. And I'm glad that people enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was really fun. Really fun.
All right. So now let's move on to our main topic. Today we'll be starting a 2-part series on Michael Piller, who made a huge contribution to Star Trek. He was the showrunner for The Next Generation from seasons 3 to 5. And a lot of people credit him with helping to improve the overall quality of the show after a rocky first couple of seasons, which saw many writers come and go. And during that period, he's probably most famous for writing the Best of Both Worlds two-parter, which was hugely influential and took TNG's popularity to a whole new level. He was also a co-creator on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and the showrunner for those shows for the first couple of seasons. And he capped off his career with Star Trek by co-writing Insurrection. He did sadly pass away from cancer in November of 2005. And before we get into talking about some of the episodes where he had writing credits, Amy, I think you had gathered some information about some of the tributes to Michael Piller that happened at the time of his death in 2005.
Yeah, I feel like I know Michael Piller a little bit better after reading these comments that so many people talked about and gave tribute to Michael Piller. Eric Stillwell actually had quite a bit to say, and Stillwell worked with Piller on Next Gen, Insurrection, and Voyager, and said he was the creative genius behind DS9 and Voyager, not only because he had enormous talent as a writer, but because he also honored and deeply respected the creative wisdom of Gene Roddenberry. Michael Piller believed the limitations that were imposed on the writers ultimately made them better storytellers, and I believe this is also true of the writers who studied under Michael's tutelage, whether they appreciate it or not. Perhaps Piller's best contribution to the industry was his nurturing of new writers. He accepted scripts from non-professional writers, something that was unheard of in the industry. Michael was a prospector who had a talent for finding those rare nuggets of gold in the avalanche of mud. Over the years, Michael Piller discovered and mentored dozens and dozens of young writers in Hollywood. And I think Star Trek is known for, accepting scripts, from your everyday Joe Blow who wants to send in something. And if there's something good, then it was taken. And we have seen episodes on Star Trek because of that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that he had that policy because it started some people's careers. That's how they found Ronald D. Moore, who was a huge influence in The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and created the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. And also Brian Fuller was one of the people that got a chance through that kind of program. And of course, he has had already a huge influence on Discovery. He's not working on it anymore, but the direction in the first couple of episodes, he's had an influence on that, and he got his career started. And there's tons of stories like that. So I think it's really great that he opened the door to that kind of policy.
Yeah, I really like Linda Foley had to say, and she worked with Piller on Voyager, and said without him, lots of writers wouldn't have gotten their first breaks. When I would get writer's block or have problems with the rewrites, he always gave the same advice. It's always about the human condition. Go back to that and you'll find your story. And so we can see as we, go over this two-part, we're going to see the stories and that human condition that Michael Piller was so wanting to convey to the audience. Will Wheaton wrote in his blog that Piller was more responsible than anyone else for Next Gen transforming itself into the amazing show it became in season 4. As far as I can tell, Piller was one of the very few genuinely good people who worked in the industry. Larry Nemechek said from day one, Michael Piller had an incredible impact not only on modern Star Trek, but on many, many writers as well. Michael Okuda says that Michael Piller has a reputation as an all-around nice guy. He was a class act, a generous soul, and a genuinely nice guy to work for. Armin Shimmerman, who knew Michael Piller personally, said that the world has lost a heart of gigantic proportions. He cared for humanity and, through his good works, addressed mankind's calamities and inequalities and successes. We will miss that moral core that he clothed in quiet understanding, wry humor, and love of baseball, and a resolve to do the very best in everything. He set his mind to. Michael Piller was a brilliant writer, and his soul lives on through the tough-minded, imaginative stories he gave us. And one last one I'd like to close with. Jerry Taylor says that Michael Piller fought a personal battle against head and neck cancer, but remained that nice guy his colleagues had grown to love. Piller's courage, determination, and amazing sense of humor during his ordeal at the end was inspirational. And I think you can really tell someone's character when they're going through something as terminal cancer like that, how they are in their true character. And I think it speaks volume for who Michael Piller was as a person.
Yeah, thank you for putting that together. Those are some beautiful tributes that happened at the time that Michael Piller died, almost 12 years ago. It was November 1st, 2005. So we thought, it would be a good tribute as well to talk about the episodes that he wrote or co-wrote. And we're breaking it into two parts because he has writing credits on 13 episodes and one movie for The Next Generation. So today we'll be talking about the first 7 of those. I'll just list it out and then we'll have discussions on each of them. So that's Evolution, Booby Trap, The Enemy, The Best of Both Worlds, parts 1 and 2, First Contact, and Ensign Rowe. And in the next episode of Earl Grey, we'll talk about the other half, which is 6 additional episodes plus Insurrection. So let's talk about the first episode where he got a writing credit, which was Evolution. Now, this was the season 3 opener, and in that episode, there's a scientist who visits the Enterprise D. He has an experiment related to a star, which can only be done, I think, like every 100 years or something like that. And in the meantime, Wesley is a little negligent with one of his experiments. These nanites get out, they start reproducing and wreaking havoc on the ship. And they have to struggle to kind of understand what's going on with this situation. Richard, you are shaking your head. You have some things to say about this episode?
This is a reason why you don't have children on the Enterprise. You got things like this, go havoc and everything. I mean, the guy even says it's actually 196 years.
Okay.
I mean, come on. You gotta. I mean, Will Wheaton. Seriously. I mean, I'm sorry, not Will Wheaton. Crusher or Wesley Crusher. Come on, get with the program.
Everybody makes mistakes. So hard on Wesley.
I know, very much so. It's actually probably one of the very few episodes that I actually sympathize with him.
Okay.
So I guess I'll start. So I actually really love this episode. It's very creative. I absolutely love the idea. I mean, granted, it was brought upon as an accident, but at the same time, it created this ascension being that in the ship's computer that's absolutely phenomenal. I absolutely love the idea that they were trying to save it and whatnot. But like, it's one of my favorite episodes of this season.
All right, what do you think about the episode, Amy?
Yeah, I really like it. Definitely you can see Wesley Crusher and, he's under a lot of pressure of school, and I know all about that. My poor students complain to me all the time, and they're staying up late, and when they come to me in the morning, oh, I was up all night doing homework, and so I definitely can relate with Wesley Crusher. And yes, it's a little sob story I hear. But he does take responsibility and, comes up and starts setting the traps and trying to, I think he's a little sly and tries to do it by himself without getting anyone involved. Like he's trying to fix it by himself, but that just doesn't work with these nanites, does it?
Mm-mm.
No, and Guinan tells him, hey, you got to tell somebody.
Yes.
So he does. I love this episode. I always have a soft spot for the ones where there's kind of a new life form and they're trying to understand it and figure out what's going on and to communicate. And this is one of those episodes. And I thought it was great that it was like these little machines that kind of reproduce. And I think that they were, kind of prophetic about this because now we talk about nanotechnology and little nano machines that might be able to, fix things or do surgery or things like that. But I just like that it's something that looks like it's this piece of technology, but they're trying to, it's almost like in the course of the episode, they have their own discovery that they want to do and exploring what's out there, which they do by eating things. But it's like this other way that they have of exploring their world, and I like that they understand it, and that Picard helps to work things out and doesn't want to just destroy all of them. I love when Picard does that. So it's an episode I always enjoy a lot.
Michael Pillars saw the episode as a real opportunity for character growth for Wesley, and this is a Wesley-centric episode. And he says, I had the story about nanites. Once I got to know the scientist and realized who he was, I realized that the scientist is Wesley in 40 years. So that's interesting to see Dr. Stubbs and just this is where Wesley could end up. And Pillar continues to say that he's a smart kid who's dedicated to his work and seems not to have much else going on in his life. If I use that relationship to get it down to a more human level, I can help Wesley grow. I can help Wesley move into a relationship with a girlfriend. That became the key element to Beverly's re-entry into the series, which was, my son is not having a normal childhood. We know a lot of kids like that. I saw that and had a sense that it was needed.
Oh yeah, good point also that this is where Beverly Crusher comes back on the show after being gone for a season, replaced by Dr. Pulaski. So yeah, that's a really interesting insight. So the next episode where Pillar received a writing credit, also in season 3, is season 3, episode 6, Booby Trap. So the main part of this is the Enterprise goes into a debris field. They get kind of stuck by this force that had trapped this ship, this alien ship, about 1,000 years ago. And they have to figure out what's going on. In the course of it, maybe what it's most famous for is Geordi going to the holodeck to try to figure out a way to fix this, and he meets the holographic Leah Brahms. That's probably what it's most known for. But I like the idea that they have to kind of get out of this situation. I mean, also, like, using the holodeck to try to figure out a problem is pretty cool. But yeah, he kind of falls in love with this hologram while the ship's in crisis, and I don't think it's Geordi's best moment. But what do you guys think of the episode?
I really enjoyed this episode. I love some of the. I love the comment that they right before they leave for on the transporter. Good Lord, didn't anyone here build ships in bottles?
Oh yeah, I love that scene.
Which something like that obviously is popular. Probably, well, I don't know about popular. Maybe a long time ago it was, but I'm sure it's still alive today. And to have something like a hobby like that, I mean, where you can like transport, you could just make it, transport it, and put it into your into the bottle or something like that instead of fiddling around. But it takes a lot of great patience to do something like that, and I absolutely love that he brought that up. That this ship is what he made in a bottle, and yeah, I absolutely love recall it to the past for even to someone's childhood like that, and that's great. Overall, I love this episode. I love. Unfortunately, it sucks that Geordi doesn't get the love story. He has to fall in love with a holographic character, I guess, or holographic interpretation of a person. And it sucks. I mean, it's sweet, but yeah, it sucks that it turns into that.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, when you talk about that, where you've got Geordi, who's in engineering, and Lieutenant Reginald Barclay, who's also in engineering, and they just both can't get along with people, and specifically women. And it's interesting to see that parallel between those two, because Geordi sometimes gives Barclay such a hard time, but here he is falling in love and going to the holodeck for Leah Brahms. It's interesting to see those two play off each other.
We hadn't seen Barclay just yet.
Well, I know, but I'm talking in general.
In general, okay. All right. We can imagine he was there.
It wouldn't generate Amy's favorite line. Reginald Barclay, great joy and gratitude.
Great joy. No, that's from Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah, but
the goddess.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Never mind. Yeah, that's what I meant.
I thought it was Hollow Pursuits where he has the goddess of empathy say that.
But
that's what I thought. That's what I mean.
Yeah, but she says great joy and gratitude in Encounter at Farpoint when the little tentacle people are.
That's right. She did.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Of course, I'm right about that, you guys. Come on. Yes, my quote is not from Goddess of Empathy, but I
swear to God, I thought it was.
Okay, well, Barclay has seen the tapes of Encounter at Farpoint, and he uses that in his holographic
there you go.
representation.
Yes, okay.
There you go. See, there's always a back door.
Yes.
There always is. Another thing I like about this episode is toward the end, Picard goes to the con and pilots the ship out of it because he's the best person to do it, I guess. I don't know if you see that too often, but I think it's really cool. He's totally into it and knows exactly what he wants to do, and is even, I think, at one point doing something that Data doesn't anticipate, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you did that."
That's Captain's prerogative.
Yeah. So that's fun in the episode. Another bit of trivia about the episode is this was directed. Booby Trap was directed by Gabrielle Beaumont, the first woman to direct a Star Trek episode.
Yes.
That's an important milestone for that. So the next one that he wrote was The Enemy. The very next episode, season 3, episode 7. Now this is an episode where, let's see, I think they're investigating a ship that's crashed on a planet, and I think a Romulan ship. And in the midst of this terrible, whatever kind of electrical storm, Geordi falls down a hole and gets kind of lost, and they have to beam up. And while he's there, he encounters a Romulan who's there, and they have to kind of work together to get out of the situation. I really like this episode. What do you guys think?
It's all right.
Really?
I mean, I get the whole, they're different and they have to work together in order to for common good and whatnot. Yeah, wasn't one of those episodes where I would go back and watch again, and like some of these other episodes that we're talking about. It just wasn't. I mean, granted, I mean it shows. It also shows, that this was the episode where Worf has to donate blood, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So and he wouldn't do that to save Romulan's life, and which I can understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, it tackles that issue of holding back all those grudges and whatnot, and you could obviously serve this for many purposes, but I mean it's not one of those ones that I really go back and watch. So, but I mean it's a decent episode. It really is. It sends a really good message.
What do you think, Amy?
Really like this. I mean, you get sort of two different perspectives on how to work with your enemy or not work with your enemy if you choose. Like, so you've got the Geordi story that's down on the planet, and he's basically forced to have to be working with this Romulan, and they're not friends. They're, and the Romulan's like, "You're my prisoner." Oh, well, good job, because there's only us here and whatever, and they really have to work together. So you see that relationship and how they both have to, in order to survive, in order to get out, they have to work together. So you have that story while you have the story that's going on the Enterprise, where Worf, his life is not impacted one way or the other over this Romulan, and so he's not forced to work with him, and so he chooses not to, even though Picard thankfully doesn't order him, strongly recommends it, but Worf has that choice where Geordi is in a situation where it's live or die. And so when it's those dire of circumstances, you're going to work with whomever you can to make it out alive. And here we have Worf choosing not to. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, and I think it's a very well written story and brings up a lot about humanity and what choices we make with whom we work with.
Yeah, I really like it as well. And I think it's one of probably the first time and one of the few times where we actually see someone from the Federation really working with a Romulan, trying to get past those kinds of barriers because they have to. And it has one of my favorite scenes in it toward the beginning after Geordi falls down the hole, and he sees that there's this compound and hits it with his phaser, and it turns into like these stone picks that he can climb up the shaft. I think that's awesome. That's like Geordi at some of his engineering best when he does that. So I love that part. I love that he has to work together with this Romulan, and that he has to really get past all of his preconceived notions, and the Romulan needs to as well, in order to work together. I do wonder if it might have been maybe more interesting or powerful if it was Worf that was stuck on the planet and then had to work together with the Romulan and was forced to. That may have actually been a stronger choice now that I think about it.
Well, the plot point of Worf letting Patak die by refusing blood met great resistance among some of the writing staff and Michael Dorn when it was suggested by Michael Piller, so it was his idea. Dorn commented, "I called the producers and said, I don't agree. I thought giving blood was an honorable thing to do. I thought people would look at Worf as a murderer. The producers felt that Worf was getting to be too human, just a guy with a big head. When the opportunity came for them to show that Worf was not human, that he was bound by the same morals as we are, they felt it was a wonderful opportunity. In hindsight, however, Dorn saw the wisdom of the decision, remarking how it revealed the different sides of Worf. And Michael Piller noted, Rick Berman knew instantly it was the right thing to do. Once he was behind me, it was a race to the finish line, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. You knew the audience was waiting for Worf to come around because they always do that in television. But the character wouldn't do that, and I think we made a really good decision. At first, though, it was quite a shock and controversial decision. But you end up talking about survival and survival among enemies. I think it was just a natural character development." And I agree. I think the choice to not is shocking because, you're used to everything in television and episodic. Everything's got to be resolved in 45 minutes. And this was not. It's a great ending.
Yeah, I think it's a really strong decision that they decided not to do that, because if Picard had ordered him, or if he was just like, oh, well, I guess I'll do that, then it loses some of the power, because it makes it seem like this longstanding animosity can just be done away with right away. But those things take a lot of time. And so I appreciate the choice that they made for Worf not to give the blood, because he's not going to get past that, decades or maybe even his whole life animosity that he's had toward Romulans. So I think it's a really strong choice they made, and you wouldn't have been able to have that if it was Worf on the planet like I had suggested. But I like the episode a lot, and I think it doesn't get talked about, enough, because I think it's just really strong on both sides of the episode. Sorry, it doesn't quite do it for you as much, Richard.
That's all right. Not every story, resonates with me more than the next one.
No.
Well, shall we go on to the next one?
Yes.
All right. So after writing those couple of episodes and, being the showrunner for Next Generation for a season, Michael Piller, again, is probably most famous for writing Best of Both Worlds Parts 1 and 2. And of course, Part 1 had probably one of the greatest cliffhangers in Star Trek history that people watching it at the time, kind of ruined their summer to think about what was going to happen if Picard was going to live and all of that. I don't think I need to go over a plot summary of it, because I think we all know what it's about. But Richard, do you want to give some thoughts on Best of Both Worlds?
So I remember the day that Best of Both Worlds came out, or at least not the day, but the summer. It was probably the most miserable summer I've ever had, because, well, not miserable summer, but it definitely was like, it's speculating what was going on. This happened right around this June 18th of 1990, and that summer I remember everyone I knew that loved Star Trek, we were talking about it, and we were like, what's going to what's going to happen? Is Picard going to die? Is this? I mean, it generated so much conversation, and people that I had no idea. Now, granted, I don't see them anymore because this was elementary school for me. But yeah, like it definitely it was one of those memorable cliffhangers that I mean, you were in awe when you saw that whole the entire episode and what was going on and everything. And I think it blew my mind back then. I don't know about you guys. Did you guys see it for the very first time back in 1990? No?
I didn't. Did you, Amy?
No, I hadn't been turned on to it quite yet, so I caught it. But when I got the DVDs, and they only came out one season at a time, and so I remember getting the DVDs and watching it. I'm like, I have to wait like 2 months to get the next release of season 4, So I had a cliffhanger experience while I waited. Well, it was probably 1 month for the next
Yeah, I was gonna say
season.
yours wasn't as long as ours was,
Right?
because I was only like 8 or wait, 8. Yeah, I was 8 years old. Yeah, actually I was 7. But when the episode came about, but like, oh my gosh, yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy summer.
Well, and learning more about Next Gen and Michael Pillar, like one thing I remember, and you'd see on the DVDs, like, Michael Pillar came on for season 3 and he wasn't sure if he was going to be coming back. And so he wrote this Best of Both Worlds Part 1. And he says that he wrote the crap out of it and left it as a cliffhanger because how did he care it was going to resolve? He was going to be done, He wasn't sure if he was coming back. And so then when Gene Roddenberry talked to him and was like, we want you to come back. And then he was like, oh, crap. Now I have to figure out how are they going to get Picard, And so it was really, I think it's interesting to see that he was writing this cliffhanger and he had no idea how they were going to get out of this one, So
That's pretty
that was
amazing.
interesting.
Could you imagine if they actually killed him off?
I have thought about it actually. I mean, so the thing is, like, for me, not having watched it at the time, I knew that Picard would continue. I knew that it would get resolved in a certain way, but I think at the time there were a couple of things, like they weren't sure if Patrick Stewart was going to come back for the next season. I think legitimately when they were writing it, they didn't know that, and also because Tasha Yar had been killed off in the first season, I think it probably seemed possible that they might kill off another main character, and it would have been a very different show if Riker had continued as the captain. I mean, I think it would have taken it in a whole different direction, but I would say probably if Best of Both Worlds were made today, they would have killed off Picard and taken that different direction, because that's more how TV works now.
For sure, yeah.
That makes you sad.
But we're glad we still have Picard.
Yeah, no, right?
Yeah, because I mean, you think of all of the things that happened after Best of Both Worlds, right? There was family that happened. There was the Inner Light and All Good Things, and of course a whole bunch of other episodes. But so many great Picard moments that you think of, and if it had been cut short there, that would have been kind of insane to miss out on all of those things. But I think it's a real credit to Michael Pillar. In particular, that he did it in such a way that people didn't know. Even though the nature of TV was more episodic, you don't kill off your characters, people didn't know what was going to happen or if Picard was really going to die. I mean, and also when I think about this episode, the Borg had been introduced in Q Who, which is the first half of season 2, right? And then I think there were a couple of mentions of them, but you didn't see them until this episode. So it was something that, from what I've read, they were trying to figure out how to include the Borg or what to do with them. So it took them about that year and a half to kind of figure it out. And when they did, the way that they were presenting the Borg, they were just, more menacing than ever, more of a threat than ever. And even though, of course, they still just have the one cube, but the way that it was put together, I remember, watching it for the first time not all that long ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago, but it's just such an exciting episode. And there's just this air of change around it because you have Commander Shelby coming on as the Borg expert, and she's bumping, up against Riker. And I think also it would have been fascinating if Picard had died and Riker was the captain and Shelby was the first officer, for them to get along and move forward. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think, like, I've seen people comment, more recently about Best of Both Worlds, saying the first part is amazing and the second part is kind of a letdown. And I've never seen it as that. I think the second part is really exciting, and I love the way that it gets resolved with what Data, finds out and kind of tricks their kind of backup system. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Because I have seen some commentary that some people think the second part doesn't quite live up to what the first one sets up.
Yeah, I would actually have to agree with that. Part 2 wasn't the best episode. I mean, it was a great ending to it. I mean, it was me personally, I thought it was a cop out to put them to sleep. And then it
well, how would you have
explodes.
resolved it?
I don't know.
That is the brilliance of it. The simple one word, sleep. And to try, and you think, oh, put them to sleep. Like, that's where your brain goes. But no, to get that hidden meaning, that, subtext of it, That's what makes it brilliant.
But what I love about it too is that it also speaks to the Borg's arrogance, right? They're supposed to be, these beings that are, better than biological organisms, but there's kind of this loophole or backdoor that they can get into because I think in a way the Borg are arrogant enough not to kind of forestall all of those different possibilities. So it actually works really well for me, and I like the second part just as much. But I can see also how you might feel it's a cop out and there's not a big confrontation, but they just kind of go to sleep and
It
destroy
just
the
seems
ship.
like
But
the whole entire the whole entire first episode was a huge dramatic build up, and then of course we get to the second one and it's something as simple as sleep. It doesn't do it for me.
Simple. That's what makes it brilliant. I will say it
it's-
over and over again.
You can say it over and over again. I'm gonna tell you, I think it's a cop out. But that's just me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I honestly don't know what else was out on the table and what could end this episode as well. But I just think that I don't know. Something as simple as sleep is something that they could have just done something different. I don't know. But I mean. If it wasn't a complete letdown, obviously we're happy to see Picard back. But it could have. I think it could have ended something bigger. I mean, like a huge bang, like they did for part one.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, Richard. I mean, I think you're representing a certain segment of fans that feel that way, that it was a letdown. They probably could have, and they wouldn't have done this back then, but they probably could have made it bigger if Picard was able to help in resolving this situation, but the strain on him and being disconnected from the collective was so much that he died. Right, that would have been a big way to end it. Right?
Oh my goodness! Oh wow, that would have sucked.
Yeah, but I mean, that again, that's something that maybe would be more likely to happen with today's TV. But that's a big way they could have ended it. And like for a moment, as I was watching it for the first time, I thought, oh, they're talking about the danger of him being disconnected from the collective, and it might kill him. Like, what if it actually did, and he sacrificed himself to save humanity?
That actually wouldn't be a bad ending. Well, I mean, obviously we'd lose Picard, but that wouldn't be a bad ending, to be quite honest.
It would be shocking, right? Because you're like,
shocking.
Oh, he made it to the first episode of season 4. He's fine. What? They just killed him at the end of this episode.
He's back!
What?
No. Oh wow!
So there we go. We rewrote it.
There you go. And then the rest of the seasons 5 and 6 didn't exist. Sorry, guys.
That's the end of the Next Generation. That's it. No.
Dang it.
But no, I mean, really, like, I think about the alternate, like, timeline where something like that would have happened. It would have been such a different show. I don't know if it would have worked or if it would have been interesting, but I certainly would have missed Picard.
No, definitely the continuation of Picard was a good idea. Was a smart move, and it obviously was a good move because I'm sure that everyone. I don't know. The internet now probably would have broke that his contract is going to be continue on for the rest of the year. Like, TV shows get spoiled all the time here now, but definitely. We wouldn't have gotten those great episodes in 5 and 6 and 7, and yeah.
So what do you think if, so that was one of the issues. Another one, like you said, with Shelby and Riker and having that conversation of Riker, why hasn't he moved on to be a captain? What do you think Star Trek would have been, or Next Gen, if Riker did captain another vessel and we didn't see him again?
Oh, if he just moved on and someone else was the first officer, like Data or Shelby or something like that?
Right, yeah.
That's
Because
another possibility.
Michael Piller talks quite a bit about this, saying that, because he had the 1-year contract, and so was he going to stay or was he going to go? And he said that by the end of season 1, season 3, I was struggling with whether or not to stay or leave. And this came out in the screenplay, Best of Both Worlds, as Riker spoke about those issues. And he said that whole conversations, and his storyline, Riker's storyline, was mirroring what he wanted and his discussions that he was having with himself. And he said, he remembered, as I was writing the script, I found myself in the position of Riker, who was trying to decide whether he wanted to leave the ship or not. Much of what happened in part 1 was about what was going on in my head. One of the scenes in particular, Piller recalled, Riker is talking to Troi about why he hadn't left. That was really me speaking through Riker. The writer elaborated, when Riker talked to Troi about why am I still here, and she's telling him, because you're happy, that was a conversation I had with myself several times during the course of writing this show. So Piller was finally convinced to stay on, as Gene Roddenberry personally urged him to do so.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I've seen a few other stories like that with other writers where they're kind of working something out with themselves and it comes out in a script that, millions of people see it play out on the screen. I just find that whole idea really interesting. Yeah, but also if Riker had decided, okay, maybe it's time for me to move on and captain my own ship, how would the show have been? It wouldn't have changed it quite as much as Picard dying, but it would have changed things. I mean,
I think it depends on how the crew sees it. Because for some reason I was thinking about I don't know if you read it or not, but and I hope everyone else has read it, or at least part of it. In the first part of the Enterprise book called Kobayashi Maru, obviously we all know what the ship is and what the situation was, but it deals with the Enterprise, and he chose not to save. So it just reading the book, it reminds me of how everyone basically looked down on Captain Archer, and basically, you should have done this instead of this, and save those people's lives and whatnot. And I was just thinking, it's like maybe they could have gone from that angle, where everyone was depressed about the situation. Everyone was depressed about what happened, and that they lost Picard because of this, even though Picard, sacrificed himself in order to save, Earth and whatnot. And maybe something like that is not perceived to the rest of the crew, and you can go through that, sort of like definitely you'll get that kind of drama and conflict that every show, strives to do, and ultimately hopefully becomes successful by telling other stories through that depression and whatnot. But like, you could definitely do something like that, is what I was thinking. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe this would all work if season 5, 6, and 7 sucked, but it doesn't. So it just gets better and better. So
right, but yeah, like for Riker, I imagine if Picard survived, but Riker decided to go on to his own command, and you just see him from time to time. Of course, you'd miss great episodes like Frame of Mind that we talked about in the last one, which is an amazing Riker episode, and some others. Maybe we wouldn't have had Thomas Riker, but where they come across this planet and they're like, Will, what are you doing here? Why do you look so different?
You got a goatee.
So that would have changed the show. Anyway, I guess one of the reasons why The Best of Both Worlds is such like a powerful two-parter is because it is like a fork in the road where different things could branch off and different possibilities could happen. And I really like when you have such a pivotal episode like that. And Best of Both Worlds is probably like that, maybe more than any other TNG episode, where they could have gone a couple different directions.
Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to note is it seems like Michael Piller was very open, obviously, to new scripts coming in, and also when actors would say, hey, I think my character would do this. So it happened where Gates McFadden went to Piller and says, I think I'd like to, it'd be fun to fire a phaser. And Michael Piller was happy to accommodate the actress's request. And so she goes on the away to get Captain Picard. And, and in hindsight, it makes sense to have the doctor going, and especially Beverly, risking her life because of their past relationship, and that makes it stronger there. But you'd want your medical officer going to retrieve Captain Picard for something like that. So I think it just speaks volumes to how he was open to the cast and crew and for ideas. And I think it makes the story better.
Yeah, definitely. And I haven't thought about that when I've watched the episodes before, that you see her fire a phaser and you haven't before. But yeah.
Does she do that at any time after? Does she do it after this episode? I don't remember firing a phaser after this.
Well, the high ground.
Probably
Well, I don't know if she fires.
Suspicions where she kills the guy, the alien, right? Isn't that what Crusher does?
Right. Yeah. Wait,
Remember the? I think that's her that does that. You know, the one where she brings these people together for this, I guess, research on metaphasic shielding, and there's this guy that they think is dead but isn't.
Did
Doesn't
she
she have to
shoot a
kill him
phaser?
at the end?
I thought they could put him into custody or something like that.
Pretty sure the guy dies, but I haven't seen it for a while.
We just talked about it too. It was one of my picks in season 6. Yeah,
Suspicions? Are you sure?
positive.
This is where we say our memories aren't that good for certain things.
Yeah, clearly, and thank God
last week.
for Memory Alpha. I don't know, but maybe I don't remember her firing her phaser. To be quite honest, I don't remember at all. Wait. Yes, she does. Mm-hmm. Yep, she does.
Yeah, she blows a hole in his torso.
That's right.
it.
Yeah, there's a picture of it right there. As soon as you said that, it came out. I'm like, yep, that's right. Okay.
So yeah, not only does she fire a phaser, but she kills someone later on. Yeah. And I guess Best of Both Worlds set the stage for that. Maybe.
Oh my goodness.
So I know we already talked about it, but I want to go back because now I was just reading this and talking about putting the Borg to sleep. So Pillar preferred that the Borg would be defeated not by sheer strength, but by ingenuity from Picard's human insight. Like Picard, Pillar sought to defeat the group of formidable villains by determining an unexpected and subtle weakness, ultimately setting the solution of putting the Borg to sleep. The notion of using the Borg's interdependence as their vulnerability suddenly occurred to Pillar a mere 2 days before filming on the episode was scheduled to start. That would be so nerve-wracking. Well, we got to start filming. I don't know how it's going to come out. 2 days before. I just can't even imagine the stress. And so I just found that very interesting. It was a tough problem to solve. I mean, he wrote a fabulous cliffhanger. So how's he going to do it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, not only probably any time it's stressful to come up with it 2 days before, but so many millions of people were highly anticipating the conclusion of this cliffhanger, so there was even more stress on that. So, wow, that's pretty incredible that he came up with it just a few days before. I mean, and as I said before, when I first saw it, that ending made sense. It didn't feel like a cop-out to me, but I know not everybody feels that way.
Yeah, he says, we got to the scene where they had to solve the problem. Time was running out. There was only 10 minutes left in the show. And finally, they came up with the answer that the Borg's strength was also their weakness, that their interdependence was their strength, and interdependence could lead to their defeat. Yes. He's like, I can remember the smile on my face when I heard that. I said, oh, that is cool. And that's how we ended it.
No, Patrick Stewart's really good. I mean, I love, when he becomes part of the collective, and there's part at the end where he's kind of half in one and the other. I think Patrick Stewart does an amazing job of these different kind of parts of the character. And, just overall, all the acting and everything, I think it's so strong. I mean, we could probably talk about Best of Both Worlds for,
Why haven't we?
a long time. I think it's been talked about before, but this was our big moment to talk about it for 20 minutes or something like that.
Well, because, Michael Pillar's this is his episode. These two parts, this is really where he's stamping his imprint on the rest of Trek. I mean, the previous shows definitely, but this is major.
And he's the only one that's credited on it. Now, for these things, a lot of times there's people that help in an uncredited way, but because he was a showrunner, probably he was doing all of it, and he's the only one that's credited. And on a lot of the other episodes, he has different co-writers for it. But yeah, this is like his big statement, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, you can see also Pillar's hand in the Picard and Riker, and is Riker big enough to fill the center chair and take on his command, and that sort of, we see episodes after where Riker comes across a decision, should I take this command or not, throughout the rest of the series, and has started here.
All right, so the next one that he wrote after writing Best of Both Worlds as episode 26 of season 3, and episode 1 of season 4 was season 4, episode 15, First Contact. So the episode, not the movie. And I actually had occasion to rewatch this one just recently, but I'll get your guys' thoughts first because I'm curious what you think about the episode. Amy?
So remind our listeners what this one is, because
the
movie
sorry.
is so well known that sometimes they forget.
No, you're totally right. Okay, so First Contact. Basically, there's this civilization that's on the edge of getting warp capability, and the Federation has been kind of monitoring their progress, and they put down some observers on the planet. One of them is Riker, and I think he gets injured, has to go to a hospital. They suspect he's an extraterrestrial. Of course, he denies it. But then during that time when Riker's lost and Picard doesn't know where he is, I guess as part of their usual First Contact procedures, they go to see the main scientist who's working on their warp program, a woman named Marasta Yale, and tell her, about the Federation and First Contact, bring her up to the ship. And they do the same thing with I guess what's kind of their prime minister of the planet. But, in the end, when, and Picard tells them, oh, of course, if, you don't want to have any contact with us, we can leave and you'll never see us again. And there's a group that really doesn't want anything to do with extraterrestrials, and they're offended that the Federation has had these people observing them for some years, and they tell them to leave and never come back. So that's kind of the episode. I find it really interesting.
This is actually one of my picks for season 4. This is definitely how I could see it. First Contact for here, actually, here on Earth. I mean, I would hope someone from another planet doesn't hear us. But
maybe they're observing our podcast right now.
Yeah. Next we're all going to get abducted. Oh no.
Although, you know what? We're not on the edge of warp capability, so maybe not.
Yeah. Maybe. But this is definitely one of those episodes that, I could see a lot of people freaking out all of a sudden, and I would not doubt it if there are groups out there that don't want to have alien contact and whatnot. But I could totally see some, a group like this just freaking out and just, about an alien, especially if it came out into the public. Yeah, and I think we talked about Roswell, didn't we? Talking about some of the restaurants that they have out there in Area 51, or in New Mexico too. No,
on Earl Grey.
Yeah,
did we talk about that?
No, I remember us talking about it. I just no. Am I just talking about another conversation?
Amy's shaking her head.
I don't remember.
All right, apparently I'm the
sorry.
crazy one here. So all right, but it's just there's a lot. There's just it's a great episode. To me it's comedic, but it's also a serious episode that we just need to be mindful, because this very well could happen to us. If you don't believe in life in another planet, then ignore what I just said. So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. And Michael Piller says that he found the concept irresistible to show for the first time how first contacts are dealt with in the Federation. He said what held the episode back was not the idea itself. And he says, our rules told us we never have open shows, and we wrote the first 2 drafts from our point of view and realized it wasn't working. The thing that was holding us back was a rule. And I'm very much a supporter of the rules of Gene's universe, but I also love to break them if they're in the interest of the show. I went to Rick and said, even though I know he doesn't like to break the format, this could be a special show if he would let me write it from the alien point of view. He did, as long as I let everyone know that we weren't going to ever break this rule again. No other show in the history of Star Trek has taken an alien perspective of our characters, and I think it makes it very special and unique. This format ended up also being on Voyager Distant Origin.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that one, yeah.
Yeah, so to take that from the alien perspective, one of those Gene's rules that, these writers had to be under, but I think it really does a good thing when we get to see that perspective and say, well, yeah, we get to meet the Enterprise D through fresh pair of eyes.
Yeah, I think that I do really like the idea of seeing something from an alien perspective. I mean, it has a certain relevance because, in Discovery, we're seeing things from a Klingon perspective as well as a Federation perspective. But this was kind of the first time that was, I guess, done in Star Trek. But, as I was rewatching the episode yesterday, a couple of questions came up in my mind. Like, okay, so they're on the edge of warp capability. Picard says they want to avoid just a random first encounter in space. So they just beam down to this scientist's office and surprise her. I mean, I would think a lot of things could go wrong if you do that. And they do the same thing with the minister, and they have all of these observers. Now, we've seen before this, I think, in Who Watches the Watchers, where they have like this duck blind kind of area and they're observing people and something goes wrong. But I could see something going wrong less often with that than you send people to just like walk around on the street and observe things. It seems like a lot of things could go wrong with that. And maybe this episode points that up, but I kind of question the Federation's first contact procedures. Why not wait until you do meet them in space and they're more ready for it than surprising them and then having to reveal to them that you've been spying on them. I mean, imagine if that happened on Earth. Some extraterrestrials came, they're like, hey guys, we infiltrated your society for a couple years, but it's cool. We're good. Don't worry about it. We just want to make contact. I mean, people would be in an uproar, right? I mean, like, how could the Federation think that's a good idea to do that,
But I
think it only happened. Oh, what did you say, Richard?
I said, but
He's making a reference.
I Love Lucy is on.
You're making a reference to Carbon Creek, the Enterprise episode, right?
Sorry, Amy. Go ahead.
I think they only beamed down because it was a dire situation, right?
No. It's not necessarily that part, but for several years, they've had people that landed on the planet, made themselves up to be like the native species there and just walked among them. I mean, that's bound to sow some real like distrust when you find out that that's been happening. Like, I can't imagine that that's a good policy. It just seems like such a bad idea. But anyway, that's
well,
I can see your point.
I mean, you can only do so much with sensors. I mean, you could see them from the ground. I guess you could hear their conversations from the sky and whatnot. See them from the ground. Oh my gosh.
Just laying on the ground.
Yeah. See them from space is what I mean. And even listen to their conversations if you get close enough. But still, I mean, it's one thing when you observe and whatnot. It's another thing when you interact and actually start to get to know them and whatnot for the most part. And I think maybe we could maybe we would be able to find out a species that has the same kind of values as we do. I'm sure there are species out there that don't even come close to what our values are. Maybe those species we don't even try to make contact unless they make contact with us. And I'm just thinking that would probably be a good policy to just to get to know them. I mean, maybe not a long duck blind mission or something like that, but definitely just long enough to where you can actually get a feel for what's going on. I guess, if you really want it, I don't know if you want to watch our news and what's on television for us, but they
actually had a comment in the episode like, yeah, we watched your transmissions, but there's only so much we can learn. And I think, I think maybe it was Marasta was like laughing, like, yeah, you're not going to learn what you really need to from that. I mean, imagine if people just watched like our reality TV or something and they thought that's who everybody was, right?
My goodness, that would be just crazy. Or they could just watch Star Trek. Let's just start broadcasting Star Trek on the radio waves or whatever that gets out there in space. And then, they'll watch that first. No, probably not first, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, all concerns about how the Federation does things aside, I think it is a really great episode. And I love that you're seeing this first contact with a species and it ends up in them saying, no, we don't want to see you for a while. Although it is very interesting that Marasta decides to go with them to experience being in space. So they've already had like a big impact on their civilization because they're taking their main space administrator or something. And I thought about it afterwards, like, okay, are they just going to have some cover story that she just disappeared? Oh, she's gone. Can't find her.
Training accident. Training accent. Sorry.
So, but it does bring up a lot of interesting questions. And of course, thinking about what First Contact would be like for us on Earth if it actually happened. Could it be like the movie First Contact? Could it be like the First Contact here? Could it be something worse or in the middle? I don't know. Who knows? It's totally unpredictable. But this episode's interesting to think about that. So the last one we'll look at today, but of course, remember, listeners, we'll look at other Michael Piller episodes as well as Insurrection next week. But the last one we'll be taking a look at is Season 5, Episode 3, Ensign Ro. Now, we did talk about this one in quite a lot of detail in a previous Earl Grey episode where we talked about Ensign Ro. And as a lot of people know, I love her character, but just wanted to see if there were, other comments that we had to make about this episode or Michael Piller's involvement in it.
Well, Michael Piller felt that the introduction of Ro was a success. He's quoted to say, "It's one of the season's greatest accomplishments. Not just by Rick and I, but by the acting of Michelle, who is just a wonderful performer. You don't just throw in new people because this audience is really particular about who they're going to make part of the family. But I've heard almost no resistance to Ensign Ro." Well, that's just because I haven't seen Conundrum yet, and then I get resistance. But
he was talking about at the time it first aired. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I'm just putting my 2 cents in there.
Like
if
I said
you've
before,
listened to our
lost her
Ensign
memory.
Ro commentary.
They didn't know any better. I mean, come on.
Yes. But Piller credits this success as due to the use of Guinan. Quote, "I think Guinan embraces Ro in a very personal way. She basically took Ro by the hand and said she deserves your attention and deserves to be embraced by you. When she took Ro to Picard for that very reason, in essence, she was doing that to our audience. It was not a very easy show to write. It was not until we found that relationship between Ro and Guinan that I was personally satisfied that we had really done something magnificent." And I think you can see that relationship with Ro and Guinan later in the one where they are kids.
Rascals.
Yeah, rascals. Not little rascals, just rascals. But you can see that. And that relationship started with Michael Piller writing that here in Ensign Ro.
Yeah, and that Ro Guinan interaction, I think it was brilliant for them to do that, and it works really well. Actually, Amy, I had something in a book that I have, which is the 50-year mission, the next 25 years, that Michael Piller also had to say about Ro that I wanted to share.
Oh, great. Please do.
Yeah, so he said, what was in the back of our minds was the need for a character, and we thought we needed another woman on the show. When we talked about what kind of woman we would want, we thought it would be nice to have someone who had a little backstory and somebody we could use to create some conflict. So Rick and I, that's Rick Berman, worked on the concept of Ro, and it was a show I was very satisfied with. So it's kind of interesting that they wanted to create a new character, I guess a new recurring character, and that they wanted it to be a woman. And as I've said, I think it's a really strong character, one of my favorites, and one of the inspirations for Kira on Deep Space Nine, who's my favorite character in Star Trek. But yeah, they had this intention, like, we're going to create this character, has some backstory, has some conflict, which was something different than before. And they executed it, and they were, happy with it. And I know not every fan loves Ro, but I think there are a lot of people that love the character and appreciate that she's a little different than the rest of the cast. Again, listeners, we did talk about the episode Ensign Ro a lot in our Ro episode. If you haven't checked that out, we I think had a good time talking about the 8 episodes that Ro is in. So I think that's Earl Grey 181. Okay, so now that we've talked about these 7 episodes, the first half of the ones that Michael Piller wrote or co-wrote on The Next Generation, what are your final thoughts about, what these episodes kind of say as a group, or what they might say about Michael Piller?
Well, one thing that I notice, and I really like that we're doing this because I think we can see overall maybe some main general themes. And what I pick up in seeing Michael Piller's work on Next Generation is his true love and development of characters. I mean, in Evolution, where we're developing Wesley and getting that, and Booby Trap with Geordi's, relationship and how he and start his arc. And then with Worf and the Enemy, obviously character development we talked about with Riker. and his choosing to stay and his arc throughout the rest of the seasons, and Shelby and I really see these character developments, Ensign Ro and Guinan, that are going through and that sort of take us through the rest of the series, and that they're set up here with season 3 with Michael Piller starting and bringing that, and seeing also the human condition and what we can overcome and the challenges that we have as mankind, paralleled through these stories of the next generation. So I love seeing all of these episodes and talking about them together so that we can see his overall contributions to the next gen and how great they are.
Excellent. Richard, final thoughts for today?
I wish you'd have made more.
Yes.
Or I wish you'd have came on board a lot earlier.
Yes. Oh my gosh. How
yeah.
great would it have been to have him on season 2 or 1?
Yeah, I mean, these are all great stories. He definitely could have came out with a lot more had he have been on the show. Well, I don't know when he up and decided that he wanted to be a part of Star Trek, or if he got or when he was considered for Star Trek. But I mean, for sure.
Well, I think he was just asked at the beginning of season 3 to help out and run the show after Maurice
someone should have
left.
realized his talent and asked him in season 1
Sooner. Yep.
Yeah,
Agreed.
but there was so much chaos on the show the first couple of years.
Oh,
Have
you
guys
mean
seen?
Yeah.
Chaos on the Bridge?
Yeah, Chaos on the Bridge is what I'm thinking of, because have you seen that, Richard?
Mhm. Yeah, I have.
Yeah. And listeners, if you haven't seen that, it's a great documentary that's helmed by William Shatner, where he interviews people involved in the first 2 seasons of The Next Generation, and things were crazy on that show. It's amazing that anything got done at all,
Right?
And that we got some of the good episodes we did.
And it was covered on an Earl Grey episode as well. Chaos on the Bridge with the original Earl Grey crew.
I was gonna say no, we didn't.
Okay. It wasn't us, but I guess it was covered
Yes.
on a previous
I
one.
was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, but I mean, otherwise, I mean, all these episodes are fantastic. They really are. Overall, they're all fantastic. They really are. A lot of them. I mean, it's all obviously he wanted to give them a really big story for Best of Both Worlds Part 1, but all the other stories definitely give a very good message, especially if you go in depth with them and whatnot. But yeah, it's a really he's come up with a lot of good stories. Absolutely love him.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think about as I think of going through these 7 episodes, I think a theme that comes through a lot of them is working together. So like in the episode Evolution, the crew has to work together to figure out what's going on with these nanites and try to understand things. In Booby Trap, Geordi has to work together with a holographic representation of an engineer that helped to develop the Enterprise. And in The Enemy, Geordi has to work together with a Romulan. In Best of Both Worlds, Riker and Shelby and a lot of the rest of the crew have to work together to figure out how they can get out of this difficult situation. Now, I think it's a little bit different in something like First Contact, which is more about what can go wrong in a first contact situation. But at the same time, that one is very much about their desire to help work together with a new civilization. It just doesn't work out in this case. For Ensign Ro, there's a huge amount of conflict at the beginning, but the crew kind of learns to work with her and to really, at Picard especially, to trust her opinion so they can work together and resolve the situation. So that's one of the things that I see a lot of, is his interest in seeing the crew work together to resolve, difficult situations or ones that they haven't seen before.
Agreed. Yeah. That's great point out.
Yeah, and I do love, Amy, when we go through these and we can see some of these commonalities or different things in groups of episodes. It's really great, and I'm looking forward to doing it again next week with the rest of the Michael Piller episodes and the movie. Well, it's been fun talking about episodes written by Michael Piller today, but that isn't the only thing we've been talking about here on the network. Here's what you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
For an opening episode to get that relationship. Like, you could see that crew really had been working together for 7 years, which is so not normal for a launch, for a first episode, right? Because you've got the odds, but they seemed to have working forever together. The camaraderie that they had, the trust that they have with each other.
To the journey!
And then, they're all up on the bridge and everyone's like, oh, what's B'Elanna doing with her day off? And Tom's like, oh, she's binge watching Bill Nye. She's been there, in her PJs since 8 o'clock this morning.
I can picture her. She's been watching Bill Nye all day. Tom comes home and she says to Tom, Tom, have you ever thought about wearing a bow tie? That look good.
But if he's on the bridge and says all that, would Captain Janeway know who Bill Nye the Science Guy is?
Yeah. It's Janeway.
The 602 Club.
So I graduated from high school in 1984. So this film came out in my, sophomore year in high school? So that was like prime formative years for me. This is, this and Mad Max were the R-rated movies that me and all of my friends wanted to go see.
Meta Treks.
It knows to point that out and say, that's red. It will correctly identify the red shirt as red, but really perceives it like we perceive blue.
I knew Kirk should have wore his green tunic when he went to fight the Gorn.
Yeah, it would have made all the difference.
It would have made all the difference.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all of these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcast. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and written review. That really helps other listeners find us and to join in on the conversation. So please, we would love to hear what you think about the show.
If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place is in the Babel Conference. That's our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up.
If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select Earl Grey. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM.
So, Amy, where can people contact you?
Well, you can find me here on the network. I co-host The Edge, which is Trek FM's podcast for our new Star Trek Discovery show. And I co-host with Brandon Shea Mutella, Aaron Harvey, and Mike Schindler. I also do a little show called Postcards from the Edge, where we talk about fan response for each episode. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is on the Babel Conference. So, Richard, where can people talk to you on the interwebs?
Little show. Well, they can...
Little?
Yeah, I know. Little. They can find me on Facebook. I appear here and there on the Babel Conference. And if they want to contact me on Twitter, my handle is xransom. What about you, Justin?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at TrekFan4747, where I tweet about nothing but Star Trek. Currently tweeting out my Season 3 rewatch. I know it's been going on for a while, but I got sidetracked by Discovery. But I restarted it yesterday with Richard's favorite episode, Tin Man.
Yes!
Yeah.
I saw that on the tweet, and just warm memories of Richard's love for Tin Man. That was a good episode.
My heart goes out for you.
I thought about it too. So you can find me on Twitter, and you can also find me hanging around the Babel Conference on Facebook.
Where can they find you on Twitter?
Didn't I say it before?
No.
Should I start the whole thing again?
No, just where can...
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at TrekFan4747, where I tweet about nothing but Star Trek. And yes, I probably did forget to say that. Thank you, Amy.
Yes. You can find me on Twitter somewhere. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Well, if you would like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm. That's patreon.com/trekfm to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more, available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find the details at patreon.com/trekfm. At this time, we'd like to give a special shout out to our associate producers, Norman Lau, Justin Ozer, and Michael Huter. Thank you so much for supporting Earl Grey.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you join us next time for another cup of Earl Grey.
Great joy and gratitude.
Today is a good day to die!
Resistance is futile.